Evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I want to give a very warm and sincere welcome to our panelists, all of whom you will meet shortly. With over 1,000 leaders, advocates, and concerned participants registered for today's roundtable, the mandate for community-led action has never been more urgent. Your presence here signals a powerful truth that the movement for environmental justice and protections against threats to our health and well-being has reached a critical turning point. At the National Wildlife Federation here, we know that a healthy, safe, and sustainable environment is only possible through systemic integrity, where we ensure that the right to clean air and safe water and vibrant neighborhoods is guaranteed to everyone, regardless of race or zip code. This is the heart of our program, our Environmental Justice, Health, and Community Resilience and Revitalization program. Along with other roles, we serve as a national convener where we support a cross-cultural collaborative of leaders of color who are reclaiming their power to protect communities from industrial harm and to build a future of true resilience. And a vital pillar of that work is our Clean Economy Community of Color Roundtable. This alliance of Black, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, and Pacific Islanders is more than just a policy group. It's a powerhouse of a variety of activists, grassroots advocates, and subject matter experts across a wide range of environmental and economic disciplines and backgrounds. We're all here to ensure that every facet of our evolving environment, every issue that is at the forefront of our collective attention, from the energy we produce to the technology we use, is guided by the expertise and the public health interests of those who have historically borne the heaviest burdens of pollution and neglect. Today's roundtable focuses on a rapidly emerging threat to this vision, the expansion of artificial intelligence data centers. And while AI is often discussed in the abstract, its physical footprint is deeply felt on the ground. These massive facilities consume staggering amounts of electricity and millions of gallons of water daily, often in areas already facing environmental stressors. Too often, these digital warehouses are sited near communities of color that already carry a disproportionate burden of industrial pollution. And we're here today because the AI gold rush, as we call it, cannot come at the expense of community health, grid reliability, or affordable utility bills. Today's discussion is about ensuring that as technology moves forward, our communities are not pushed backwards. We will hear from leaders who are fighting to ensure that community voices are the blueprint for how this infrastructure is built, regulated, and held accountable. And with that in mind, I would like to turn this roundtable over to Dr. Jacob Carter, the Environmental Justice Program's new Associate Vice President. He's been with us almost 3 months now. Dr. Carter, Jacob will ground us in the importance of this issue and serve as moderator of this evening's very important roundtable. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you, Dr. Hollis, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for kicking us off and for framing the purpose of this really critical and important roundtable series. As Dr. Hollis said, my name is Jacob Carter. I am with the National Wildlife Federation's Environmental Justice, Health, Community Resilience and Revitalization program. And on behalf of the National Wildlife Federation and the Clean Economy Coalition of Color Roundtable, I want to welcome you to tonight's roundtable, AI Data Centers, Local Perspectives, and Community Impacts. We're really grateful that you all are here, and really grateful to have all of the esteemed panelists here. I'm very honored to be in the presence of everybody that will be speaking tonight and in community with you all. Let me quickly walk through just fast through our structure so everybody knows what to expect tonight. We'll spend about an hour and 15 minutes in conversation with our panelists. I'll be moderating and posing questions, and we'll have time for panelists to respond and build on each other's points as appropriate. Then we'll spend about 25 minutes at the end of today's roundtable taking questions from you all in the audience. And we'll conclude with a very brief closing reflection and next steps. This is a Zoom webinar, so if you look down below, You should see, if you click on that More button at the bottom of your screen, a place to submit questions. There's a Q&A feature. So if you have a question as our panelists are speaking tonight, please put your question in the Q&A feature. If you don't see the Q&A on your screen or just can't find it, feel free to drop a question in the chat and our team will make sure it gets captured. We also have some resources available from our panelists. So if you have resources, if you click on the resources button at the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to pull some of those up, as well as the bios of our speakers tonight. So let me just take a few minutes and build on what Dr. Hollis said earlier to ground us in why this issue matters and why we're here tonight. So over the past few years, and I would say especially probably the past year, a lot of communities have learned a new phrase, sometimes from a zoning notice, maybe sometimes from the news, a rumor, and sometimes I've heard even from communities that construction equipment starts to show up before anybody really knows what is actually happening. And that phrase or word is AI data centers. And if you listen to how these projects are often described, especially by developers and industry, you'll hear clean, you'll hear quiet, low impact. They're basically saying they're invisible, just warehouses for the modern digital world, right? But what we're hearing from communities is a different story. It doesn't feel invisible when an AI data center is next to your neighborhood. It doesn't feel invisible when a data center is in your community because the infrastructure, as Dr. Hollis said earlier, is not virtual. It's physical, and it has to go somewhere. It pulls electricity from somebody's grid. It pulls water from somebody's watershed. It reshapes land use and local planning. And it can bring a swath of other infrastructure into communities, substations, transmission lines, construction traffic, et cetera, et cetera. And what's very real right now is the pace and scale, especially under the current administration. Data centers are spreading fast, and this administration is trying to make it as fast as they possibly can. Some of these data centers are as large as a football field, and some of the campuses, which are multiple buildings, can span hundreds, the size of hundreds of football fields. And that kind of footprint changes the stakes. We're also seeing and hearing real concerns from communities, concerns about noise, concerns about traffic, land disruption, diesel backup generation, which leads to air pollution, local water use, and over, questions about transparency and accountability on how these decisions on permitting and construction of these data centers are being made. And then there's the energy demand as well. Major new loads. These facilities take lots of energy that affects energy reliability, energy cost, affects our climate and our climate goals, and often isn't planned for responsibly. So that's what we're here to discuss tonight. It's a space to listen about what communities are experiencing, a space to learn about what's working and what's missing, and support community leadership so residents have stronger networks, better information, and more leverage in decisions that shape their future. So I'm really grateful to be here, grateful to be in everybody's presence. I'd now like to take some time to introduce our panelists this evening. We have a great number of folks here to speak to you. First, we have Dr. Khalil Shahid, who is the Senior Strategist in the Green Finance and Economic Development Program at the Natural Resources Defense Council. We're also joined by Sharon Lewis, who is the Executive Director of the Connecticut Coalition for Economic and Environmental Justice and Chair of the Connecticut Zero Waste Coalition. We're also joined by Dr. Rania Masri, who is the co-director of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. We're also joined by Keyshawn Pearson, who is the executive director of the Memphis Community Against Pollution organization. And also, we are joined by Marquita Bradshaw, who is the executive director for Sowing Justice. Thank you all so much for being here and for your leadership you bring to this work every day. We really appreciate it. One quick note before we dive into questions. There are lots of folks experiencing AI data centers in different sort of stages of the process. So in some places, communities are already living with data centers. and can speak to the documented impacts. In other places, communities are organizing around proposed facilities. So the focus of tonight's questions is really on credible risk, likely pathways, and what information communities need before decisions are locked in. So with that, let's get into the questions. And the first one to our panelists is just to ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and what first drew you to this issue. Was there a specific project, community concern, or a moment that made this really real for you? And if I can ask Marquita to start us off, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Marquita Bradshaw. I am a second generation environmental justice advocate. My mom, Doris DeBerry Bradshaw, is considered the mother of the environmental justice movement here in Memphis, Tennessee. I am the executive director of Someone Justice, and we do regional work. We first started out in Tennessee, but people wanted to coalition with us because we're having the same issues, especially in Mississippi and Arkansas. We're right there all together. Uh, what drew me to this issue was I was appointed on the Tennessee Valley Authority Regional Energy Resource Council, and we were drafting a, a, a plan that would shape our energy um, for the next 10 years, right? And they started murmuring about the West Tennessee data centers in the plan and what would be the energy mix. And we made an advice statement to include environmental justice for the first time, but that's what started me to try to figure out, okay, what is a data center and why is our energy supplier TVA, which is a quasi-federal agency that covers several states, concerned about it. And so unbeknown to me, was the data centers were already operating in Tennessee and they had circumvented all the processes, but they had already started to build the relationships to power the data centers. And so that's what drew me to the issues.
Thank you so much, Marquita. Let's move on to Keyshawn.
Hey, how y'all doing? Afternoon, evening. Um, I just first want to say thank you all for convening everybody here. I've been blessed to be in community with these folks and fighting for environmental justice in a lot of different spaces. So thank you for the convening. Also want to thank my family. My family is what and who are the reason that I'm here and involved. Started with fighting against a pipeline that was coming through our community in 2020. We defeated that pipeline, the Byhalia Connection Pipeline, and formed Memphis Community Against Pollution, and was actually on June 5th of 2024 in a meeting with Mayor Paul Young to discuss an environmental justice action plan for the city of Memphis when we learned about the Elon Musk project. And from that exact moment until this moment, I've been fighting alongside Marquita and alongside a lot of different organizations in the city of Memphis and our coalition partners across the country, really, to really allow folks to understand how grave of a threat this hyperscale data center expansion is, the amount of pollution it will incur, and the amount of water we are losing every single minute because of this experiment. Because what we know is that this isn't a fortified or proven form or platform that we know humanity needs. It is an experiment being overseen and really pushed with a lot of hype by a lot of powerful people in our economy, but also politically. And so that's what drew me in. And unfortunately, I have lost my grandmothers to breast cancer and ovarian cancer, lost uncles to cancers and other illnesses because we live in a red line community that is surrounded by industry and air pollution. And we suffer because of that. We live shorter lives because of that. And so I'm here to continue to fight to ensure that the next generations don't have to deal with this.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Kishan. And thank you for your work. Let's move on and go to Sharon.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I have an external speaker. I hope it works.
We can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, as I was introduced, my name is Sharon Lewis, and I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Coalition for Economic and Environmental Justice. I'm sort of speechless because this is such a serious issue with me, but I got into the AI situation sort of backwards. I wanted to be ahead of the issue. So what we did was a lot of research on data centers, and we found out that Connecticut has 52 data centers. Now I pause because I want you to just let that sink in, but it's not the type of data centers that you think. Connecticut has had uh, huge industries involving insurance and banking. And there's almost a data center on every corner in Hartford. Not really, but they're all over the place. But they are data centers for important documents dealing with insurance companies and banks. I was really upset because I thought I was ahead of the issue. I found out that I was 2 years behind the issue. 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, Connecticut passed a law granting 20 to 30 years of property tax and sales tax exemptions to qualifying data centers. So, what is a qualifying data center? Well, part of being qualified is that you need to invest from $50 million to $200 million, depending upon the location. Sadly, the environmental racism comes in because if you invest $200 million, you might get a really small tax break. But if you invest $50 million and locate in an EJ community, you could get probably actually pay nothing because you'd be allowed to pay a pilot, which is payments in lieu of taxes. So it's not really a tax per se. So this means this is a very significant tax break while the residents foot the bill. It concerns me that not a lot of people understand how dangerous data centers are, AI data centers. So it is our job and it is our duty and it is something that we want to do in Connecticut. We want to educate folks in order to stop the growth of data centers. So that's how I got into it.
Thanks so much, Sharon. It looks like a lot of folks in the chat are talking about tax incentives. So thanks for sharing that concern. Let's move on and I'll ask Dr. Rania Masri to introduce herself.
Well, I must start by saying it's a complete honor to be with this group of panelists. So truly honored. My name is Rania Masri. I'm the co-director of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network here in North Carolina. And I joined the fight against data centers just when I learned, and I find it to be the ultimate harm. And I'm not exaggerating here. It really is the ultimate harm. When we look at the amount of water that it consumes, on average, we're talking about 500 million gallons of water a day. The amount of energy that it consumes and the amount of energy that it incentivizes in the sense of the increase of fossil fuel extraction. And now in North Carolina, they're even talking about building another nuclear power plant to fund it. When we talk about the decrease in air quality that it brings to the communities, as well as the increase in noise pollution, quite serious. And then the massive land transformation that it does. I mean, transforming our farmland, our ranch land, our land into these repulsive extraction sacrifice zones. So there's that harm. And then there's this other harm where there's this myth that we have to accept these harms because these data centers bring us jobs. Well, they do the quite opposite. Not only do they not bring us jobs, they actually take jobs away because generative artificial intelligence, which I much prefer to call artificial stupidity, but the generative AI actually is set to take away, and I'm not exaggerating this number here, in the next 2 to 10 years, generative AI will take away 1 billion jobs globally. They won't transition these jobs, they will take them away. In the United States, the main community that will be impacted by this loss of jobs are the African American community, as well as college graduates. So we're talking about massive harm to our environmental resources, massive harm to our public health, and massive harm to the state of the economy. It could be the fastest theft of wealth from the low income and middle income communities to the billionaires in the United States. And then, as if that's not enough, much of the AI, this generative AI, is being used not only, of course, to make fake porn, which is one of the most popular uses of AI, but also being used to empower surveillance by ICE, the ICE thugs who kidnap our brothers and sisters, by the US military and other military technologies that then use this military to kill people in their homes, as was exemplified in the Israeli genocide that is ongoing against Palestinians in Gaza. So we see an ultimate harm that these data centers bring. And we can flip that and say, okay, this is what excites me about this fight. Not only do we have data centers doing something so horrendous that you have to be truly, I would argue, either completely incompetent and stupid to support them or to be part of the money machine and be making money off of them. There's no other reason. So then I go, okay, can you imagine, and just imagine this with me, an umbrella that is created of all the various communities nationwide who are impacted by data centers, connecting that as well to the communities internationally, including in Zambia, by the way, who are also impacted by the data centers that we're building here. Imagine the kind of political transformation we can create if we become truly organized against data centers intersectionally. And we have seen the power of organizing already when in just 4 months last year, in just 4 months, $98 billion of data centers in the United States were halted by organizers, not by politicians, but by organizers. So that's why North Carolina Environmental Justice Network has joined the fight against data centers.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, and we're so glad that you're here in this fight. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Khalil Shahid.
I'm scared to go last because Rania hit the points so very well. And she is absolutely right. When you look at this stuff, there are no redeemable qualities, of these facilities. And, they've taken advantage of the fact that we exist in this sort of murky sort of information environment, made possible by a series of NDAs that they are requiring local governments to sign anytime they come into operation. So it makes it difficult to actually get real good data and information about, what's actually happening, how much energy are they taking, how much water are they taking, what are the environmental toxins being released, from the facility, whether it's PFAS from, the water going through the chips or, the particulate matters and other pollutants coming through the diesel generators that are often operating illegally. And so, how I got into this, issue and really where a lot of the information is coming from. And I always have to start, this way, as someone who's sitting in a national, international environmental organization like NRDC, is to thank the grassroots. Because, I first learned about this issue when Keyshawn and Marquita and other folks in Memphis, made the whole universe aware of what was happening, by coming out against XAI in Memphis. And so that was when, this really, came on our radar because, we had looked in the past at, the issue of, compute and digitization and environmental issues, and particularly when the cryptocurrency stuff began to take off. But this is taking it to a completely different scale, even beyond cryptocurrency, which, it's that's a very low bar if you're worse than cryptocurrency, because nothing is really worse than cryptocurrency, right? But and so, when this really emerged, we, began to look at this issue. And as you begin to uncover, what's happening, and my particular focus, in this work is through the lens of economic development, because particularly at the local level, a lot of this is oftentimes sold as an economic development driver for communities. And what we're seeing when we look at the data, when we look at the experience of places like Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia, we look at Ohio, we look at Memphis, we look at so many of these different places, the economic development just doesn't really materialize. Oftentimes, they are cooking the books, like quite literally, adding multipliers to the in-plan model to make it seem like they're creating all these indirect and quote unquote induced jobs, from these data centers that do not actually exist, and where they do exist are often in the low-wage service sector, because what they're really saying is when they say that we will create additional jobs through a data center, they mean that we're going to create 20 to 25 middle class jobs, and these middle class jobs are then going to finance a bunch of low wage service workers to serve these middle class people who are coming in to work at this data center. So the jobs that they're creating are not quality jobs. They're not livelihood jobs. They're not living wage jobs that are being created, and that is not economic development. And so when we look at again, the record, we saw, for example, and this isn't coming from me, but I was on a great coalition call with folks in Pennsylvania, again, learning from the grassroots. People in Pennsylvania are paying more than $340 million more in increased utility costs than the state is getting from tax benefits, from taxes, for data centers. We see the similar case in Virginia. Someone put it in the chat. Virginia over the last year has lost over $1.6 billion, in state tax revenue from data centers. And yes, it's great. Loudoun County, one third or more of their county budget is now being, supplemented, by data centers. But that Loudoun County data center tax revenue doesn't help people in Southern Virginia. It doesn't help people out near in Norfolk and some of those areas. And so those people are losing state tax revenue to service, a few counties with property taxes at the expense of what? And so what are we all gaining from it? And so, once you begin to uncover the data, again, there's very few redeemable qualities, of these facilities. And I'm just really happy to be here to see all of these people, on this call. And again, to be able to be a part of this conversation and to really learn and to soak up, what you all are finding and hearing on the ground. And I hope to be able to continue to support, you all and join in coalition and solidarity, so that we can fight our way through this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khalil. And I appreciate both you and Ronnie bringing up the economic aspect of this. I feel like that's something that's always sort of, it's going to be so great, right? We're going to grow jobs and it's going to bring in money. So I really appreciate that and really appreciate what you both had to say. I kind of want to step back here for a minute. And I've noticed a lot in the chat. There are a lot of folks coming in who are dealing with data centers, maybe some successfully, unsuccessfully, some I'm seeing. But there might also be some folks in communities who maybe heard about data centers being proposed, maybe worried about data centers coming in. I'm wondering, and anybody from, I think the panel is welcome to jump in and answer this. Is there anything that tends to make a community more likely to be targeted for data center construction? And what are the early kind of warning signs that, if you're watching for a data center coming in your community, are there any early warning signs that folks should be on the watch out for?
Well, I'm a if you're a poor community and you have plenty of water sources, and the water's cheap and the energy's cheap, they're coming for you, right? If you're already cumulative impacted by industries, they're coming for you. When we look at the data center here in Memphis, it is not just the normal data centers that have been happening around the world. This is supposed to be a centralized brain to actually mine all the data from around the world and control it. They're already contracting to the United States and other countries around the world. And so this is not just something that is going to affect South Memphis. This is going to have a regional and a worldwide impact. We had no idea. Keisha and I didn't have any idea that the world was looking at Memphis, right? how Memphis became ground zero for billionaires to rape our community and really endanger our health for over a year and a half, unregulated. And these things are done in backrooms deals with disclosure agreements. And to it makes me really angry that these elected officials are acting like they don't know what, oh, we didn't know anything about it. And it's coming out that they signed these NDAs and they're not serving the people, they're serving billionaires. And these things are not to benefit people. And it's going to have an increase on poverty, these data centers, and also devastating to the environment. We the only thing, if you have land and historically been divested from, whether you're rural or urban communities, they're coming from you. They're coming for you. And they're labeling us the new uh the 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 Delta South for AI. And that means that's telling everyone that you can come to Memphis, Tennessee and not be regulated. And so where they're circumventing any type of policy, whether it be local, state, or federal, any gaps that you have to protect people's health, they're coming for you because they're exploiting the weaknesses of policy. And also they're targeting people who don't have a U.S. senator that live on their street. It's not in the U.S. senators' backyards. It's in our backyards. And it's not just going to affect our backyards. It's going to affect all of Shelby County and this whole region. The bills, and they're shifting the costs to us, normal, everyday people. Billionaires are not paying for this. We are going to pay for it in our health, and we're also going to pay for it in our environment. And how do you get ready? You have to use the coalitions that you already have built, and you have to expand them, because we have expanded our coalition to include the NAACP. And that is how we were able to move the issue on a national level so quickly. Um, I am camera shy, and I love it when I see Keyshawn up front talking. Um, and I can work in the background educating people on air quality and using our air quality roundtable where we're using indoor cheap monitors to educate people about air qualities and what to look for. And why is that important? Because what goes on outside comes inside the houses, right? And we need to make sure that we educate people. And our health department, unfortunately, is expecting us to self-regulate billionaires that's exploiting our environment. And so that's I I really want to move to solutions, but the problem is we got billionaires that don't want to pay people. And so they're creating a technology where they don't pay workers, right? And also they don't care about the environment because they're polluting at such levels and they're using at such levels. And they don't have to be. They can actually create closed loop systems. They can actually create quieter systems, but they don't do that in communities that are already impoverished and already had divestments. And in Memphis, you're probably, Memphis is a place where you can get to anywhere 15 minutes. And so you're probably close to 5 miles within this AI. And with more AI coming to Memphis, um, and they're not disclosing the locations and the way that they rename the company into different parts, right? And so it's not, in order to break up the energy systems, to not actually go through the Federal Energy Resource Council. Because if they were applying for a multi-state uh, permitting process, they would have to go before FERC. And now what they're doing is they're doing almost like guerrilla energy permitting, right? Where it's real small. And so they're hitting us up everywhere. And so it's coming to if it's probably already in your neighborhood and you don't know it. And that's what we found out. This place operated a year and a half, renegade, and then they expect us to bring a tort against them um, to deal with that they operated because they feel like we can't prove it, right? Because we already polluted. And so anywhere that's dealing with cumulative pollution and there's land that's cheap, there's water and energy that's cheap, they're coming for you.
If I could add to that, there's also a difference in how they behave depending on where they go. And we've seen this very clearly in North Carolina. So I'll give you just one example. There's a proposal for a data center to come into Apex, Wake County. Here we're talking about middle income community, predominantly European American community. There's also a proposal for a data center to come to Edgecombe County, a lower economic bracket community and a community that is overwhelmingly African American in North Carolina, a county with the highest percentage of African Americans. The way information has been shared from those two, in those two examples has been strikingly different. In the more affluent, wider community, we have the proposal, we have the details, we know what they're planning to do. Versus in Edgecombe County, we've been fighting to get the details, we've been fighting to get some information. So not only is there an encouragement for these extractive industries to go to lower income communities and Black and Brown communities, there also is a discrepancy in the transparency of information that they provide should they go to other communities that are not of that economic bracket. I do want to add, by the way, when folks in Edgecombe County, the county commissioner, when they were evaluating whether or not to accept this proposal, they were sent to Memphis to look at the AI data center in Memphis. And they came back and they said, this is a beautiful data center. It's not beside any community. And it stunned me how, when they talk about how this data center is going to be invisible, what they're actually saying is it's the communities that are invisible. They don't even see the Black and Brown communities around these data centers, even when they're going to the data centers themselves.
I would
And
like
there are
to add.
communities nearby in Memphis. Really,
Oh yeah,
you
we
turn.
told them that. We told them that, but they don't see him. Oh, and I do want to say, Marquita, I think the problem is that we actually have billionaires. The problem is not what the billionaires do. The problem is that billionaires even exist. We shouldn't have any such billionaires.
Certainly an argument there for sure. Sharon?
Yes, I would just like to add a little bit more, and I'll be brief. Um, Another thing that would make a community a target for these developers is extreme poverty. You know, if you're located in a city that's impoverished, it's sort of like a walk in the park to make a deal with the policymakers of that town so that the policymakers can sign the NDA agreements so that the zoning variances will go through faster, so that everything is done clandestinely and in the dark because of the economic development lie. And it's really sad because that's a common denominator in EJ communities. Oh, it's going to bring jobs. And we all know that that is not true. But there's one thing that I want to bring to your attention. I visited several AI data centers in the United States. And there's one thing I noticed that would prove that they're lying about the jobs. These massive buildings have tiny parking lots.
Mhm.
So just how many people do they plan to hire and where do they come from? I found that to be quite amazing that they would have such small parking lots for the 1, 2, 3, 400 people that they claim to hire. So I'll stop there because I don't want to prolong this question.
Yeah, thank you all. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to move forward now. And I understand projects can be in different stages of the process, either proposal, permits, construction, or operations. And I see a lot of questions in the QA coming up, and I have this question to myself for each of you. What are, and I know some of you have already talked about this a little bit in your introduction, but what are the environmental and public health concerns? And maybe they're different at each stage of the process. I imagine they are, but I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, it's Keyshawn Pearson here, and that thank you all for those thoughtful answers to the last question. And for this question, one of the major things that I would tell anybody about determining whether or not they'll see a data center is very simple. If you are in the 1% and they live in your neighborhood, you're safe. If you're not, you can expect a data center to have a dramatic effect on your everyday life, whether it's physically near you or it is going to have an economic or effect on your air quality or water quality. That will happen. That will happen if we do nothing. And so the things that I would say to look out for, especially as it pertains to air quality or pollution, is microgrids. Microgrids are usually how data centers that are built very quickly operate without plugging into anybody's grid. They use methane gas turbines, which is fossil fuel energy, and essentially a jet engine or a jet turbine turned on its side to build power. In Memphis, at the XAI facility, Elon Musk used up to 33 methane gas turbines to power the facility. To help you understand how much air pollution that is, it outpaced the Memphis International Airport for nitrogen oxide pollution, which is known to complicate asthma and respiratory illnesses in community members. And so that's one of the things that comes with these data centers. But the possibility that your water will also be drained uh, is a high probability. A lot of these folks are digging wells and using the water from these underground water sources when we know that all across the country, major cities are sinking because of the deprivation of water from these aquifers below the ground. And so now this will exponentially change that situation. And so that's something else to be conscious of. But at Memphis Community Against Pollution, our main focus has been on the air quality. And because these folks are using methane gas turbines, which is fossil fuel infrastructure, we are seeing increases in formaldehyde. We are seeing increases, like I mentioned, with nitrogen oxide, and that is causing ozone issues in a county and in a city in a region that has already had a higher than EPA standard for ozone levels. And all that means is the air is harder to breathe. And when you do chronically continue to breathe in this air, you are more likely to develop asthma or allergies, which we have seen those trends continue to move forward in our area. And who's paying the hospital bills, right? Who is having to go to these funerals for folks who have complications from COPD, and unfortunately, they haven't made it. My heart continues to break for my family, but also our community members who we have to attend the funerals for since AI arrived. Our nitrogen oxide peak levels have risen 79%. Has there been any resolve, or has XAI been tried? Nothing has happened, right? And so when I think about how everyone can prepare themselves, what I would say is to focus on zoning and development rules, by right uses. And I know these terms are a little bit jargony, but zoning and development are usually the folks who have determined what the redlining communities look like. In Southwest Memphis and Boxtown and Westwood, our communities have been ambushed by industry since the redlining took place in the 1920s, and we've suffered since. And so, updating those rules uh, isn't a nice to have. It's what has to happen if we're going to survive this. And so, please, if at all possible, no matter where you are in this country, pay attention to your zoning and development uses, and really focus on maintaining the premise that we deserve clean air, clean water, clean soil, period. And so extracting any laws that allow these corporations to move forward with plans that just degrade our environment, I would look at updating those immediately. Reduce how proximate industry can be to people.
Mhm. That's well stated, Keyshawn. Anytime, uh, this is the data that I use when I'm talking about air pollution. Uh, People in the United States are 7 times likely to die from air pollution than one person gun violence. For every one person's gun violence, there are 7 people that are dying from air pollution. And the things that we're seeing on the ground, if anything ever mess with your respiratory system, it's going to mess with your circulatory system and every system in your body, right? And so it starts with how you breathe first. And then that's the reason why we're seeing a lot of circulatory, respiratory diseases, a lot of strokes and heart attacks, especially, I don't know about you, Keyshawn, but in that area around South Memphis, I'm seeing the grannies, going through strokes, heart attacks, high blood pressure, and the things that we normally put on people being poor and black are really because we're having cumulative exposures. And XAI did not help. They brought more pollution. If they weren't going to pollute, they never would have needed a permit, right? So they came in knowing if they would pollute. And it is affecting people's health. It is affecting, a lot of people say health is wealth. They're not paying those copays, they're not paying those specialists. Um, and they also not paying those utility bills because they're not building the infrastructure. They're coming in, they're trying to trick people like they're gonna have a few little generators like the ones you have at the back of your home, right? No, those methane gas turbines are power plants. And these power plants are enough energy to power 1 million homes. That's more than the population in Shelby County, which is Memphis is in Shelby County. Um, and it's like 95 counties in Tennessee. And so the scale of what type of energy they're using is also another form of environmental racism because people cannot afford the energy burden. Energy poverty is very real in Memphis. My utility bill has almost tripled over the last year. Over the last 2 years, it's tripled. I looked at the history of my utility bills. Like, when did I start paying this much? That's because they're passing the cost on. Billionaires are passing the cost on our old grid and infrastructure on us. And then now they're actually implementing technologies that we know we need to move away from. We were moving away from methane gas under the last administration. This administration, they still trying to milk fossil fuels. There is an emergency when it comes to fossil energy production. We only have anywhere from 75 to 100 years based on the consumption that's been happening. But these data centers are almost tripling and quadrupling the use of energy. That means that cushion that we thought we had on fossil energy dependence is decreasing every day these centers are operational. So not only is it making us energy insecure, it's also really moving us away from a just transition. And the people that's feeling it the most is because they're coming here because they know that nobody is going to require them to use the better technology to decrease exposures or decrease energy use. They're coming here because they can do whatever they want to. Because they got green lighted by an organization, an unelected body, which is supposed to bring in jobs, but this is not jobs. And we are at the point where if these data centers continue to come online, and when you read the newspaper, they tell you how many that's coming. They talk about the data mining centers. That's not going to benefit people in South Memphis. That's not going to create jobs. A data mining center, AI facility, even XAI, that's not going to benefit us. Uh, Twitter, they changed Twitter and they broke it. I'm totally invisible. I used to have 50,000 followers personally. I'm invisible on Twitter now. I don't even exist. When you tweet uh, now on X, it may be 10 or 15 people that see it because of not only is this technology using up a whole lot of a lot of infrastructure and water, it's also controlling what messages people are seeing, right? And so we are at that place where this technology is not only determining what kind of medical care people are getting because it's making medical decisions, it's determining what kind of sentencing people are getting in the justice system. This technology is infiltrating in all our lives in every aspect. And it's not really benefiting enough for humankind. It is environmental racism at its purest form. It is affecting the way people live, the way how many schools that's around the data centers. It's a lot of schools around the data center, and so it's affecting how people learn. And then there's a lot of it's well, this is a logistical city, and with AI coming online, there are technologies with that use automation, robots, and AI, where that's going to eliminate a whole lot of packing and picking jobs that are in warehouses and also loading and unloading. That Memphis is a logistical city. That's going to destabilize our economy here completely. And not only is it hurting people's health, but it's already started with the layoffs. And the layoffs just didn't start now. And the layoffs are happening in a lot of the logistic places. It's less people doing the work that hundreds of people used to do. We we are seeing people that are sick. This is the first time in my life that I had to deal with respiratory issues. And and of course, I live by a military landfill, but I really don't think this XAI helped me heal at all. Right? It made things worse, and it made a lot of people worse. And we're the rate that we are losing our loved ones. I know this lady's like, "Oh, you're just unlucky," and I was like, "No, that's not unlucky about how people are dying from around me. That's called environmental racism." um, and people live where they can afford and where they're red line. And we have to keep understanding how they're approaching people, what type of policies we can try to put in place. And this is not just a local fight because the preemption laws now are not just coming from our state level, they're also coming from a federal level. And even now, there's a federal policies that they're pushing through to put put data centers on military landfills. And so you can see the generators already being put up on the depot area that my mom fought for 30 years to have a more sustainable future and just a fight for clean air, water, and soil in our community is a global fight. And people around the world are looking at Memphis to lead the fight because we became ground zero fighting billionaires who really had no business coming here getting the tax breaks, the payment in lieu of taxes, the free land, all of those things that people have given it. Or even, it's a great thing that we're going to get a gray water system, but it should be publicly owned. It should not be privatized. And so these are some of the things you have to look out for. It's like, hey, we're going to build it for you. No, we should own it and we should be charging you to utilize it. And we should also be monitoring that process to see how much pollutants that you put in the Mississippi River, because we're not the only ones using the river. Uh, where we don't drink from the river, but there are over 1 million communities along the that actually do. Um, and so here we are, we're fighting to just live.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Marquita and Keyshawn. Really appreciate both of your answers. I want to kind of move on to things that everybody is learning through this very important work. And I kind of have a two-part question here for folks. What's one thing that you've learned that you think the public consistently underestimates about this issue? And what's one lesson you've learned directly from the communities you work for or in that you want everyone who's on this webinar today to leave with tonight? I know it's probably tough to take to one takeaway, but
Yeah, I'll go with this one because I think it's going to be something that you may not consider. But one thing that I learned from looking at the XAI case in Memphis, and so well, two things. One is, we have to, to push back against, the industry's attempt to make us believe that we're somehow all complicit, in this data center build out, like, oh, you like using internet, you use video chat, you like watching Netflix, so you like data centers, right? Kind of that kind of thing. Those two things are not the same thing, right? And there is a conversation to be had about the overall industry and its environmental impact, but that is a very different discussion from what's happening with these hyperscale data centers that are slated to be built at a pace of 130 to 150 new hyperscale data centers every year from now until 2035, which is going to put 90 gigawatts of new electricity demand on the grid. Or another way of putting it, we're going to be putting a city about the size of Philadelphia on the grid every year from now until 2035 of just data centers, right? So this is not the same thing. So that industry tactic about trying to make us all feel complicit is the wrong place to start, right? But when we first started looking at and learning about the Memphis case, Memphis has this sort of regional strategy, which was created by the Chamber of Commerce, which we know what chambers of commerce are typically like, and it's no different in any other place. However, just for argument's sake, they have this regional strategy called the Digital Delta, where they want to, transform Memphis and the Memphis region into this hub of digital economic development. Great. Okay. If you believe that, that's fine. XAI contributes nothing to that strategy. You have a supercomputer with almost 100,000 GPUs of chips compute capacity in not one, but now two facilities that contribute nothing to the digital economy of Memphis, because that compute capacity is not accessible to anyone in Memphis but XAI. That compute capacity is not contributing to the city of Memphis improving city services. It's not contributing to digital entrepreneurs in Memphis, creators in Memphis who can use that capacity. And so we need to, if we want to have a digital strategy for our communities and think about economic development, we have to put the onus on our leadership. We have to put the onus on the tech sector to say, we don't want data centers, we want compute. If we need compute, if we have demand for compute, for our local economies, for our schools, for our health systems that do and helps us to do tasks that we set, not dictating to us what AI is going to do for us. But we need to decide what we want and can use AI as a tool to help us with if we choose to. When we look at a place like Loudoun County with over 200 data centers, if you look at their economic development reporting, their digital economy, right? Because again, there is this lie that the data center is somehow your entry point into the digital economy. It is not. In Loudoun County, with over 200 data centers, their digital economy is made up of three sectors, and two of them are data centers: cloud data centers and AI data centers. And the third sector is cybersecurity, because it's Loudoun County, next to the FBI, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all they have from 200 data centers. So if you look at Silicon Valley, there are no hyperscale data centers there, but there's a digital economy there because they know what a digital economy actually looks like. And so we need to really, again, shed through a lot of the myths around this stuff, that again, there are no redeemable qualities, in these facilities unless we are able to use that compute to, again, to train systems to do things that we want, and not allow these tech sectors to dictate to us, what they think that we need.
I would like to add
Yeah.
to that much. A great commentary. If I were to ask people to walk away with something important, I would say that you need to walk away with the understanding that these AI data centers are serious terror-like threats to all communities. Why are they targets? Because they store and process extremely sensitive data, including medical insurance records, banking and credit card information, government data, tax records, census, public records, social security numbers, and of course we mentioned the surveillance and the facial recognition, stock market, trading platforms, financial systems. Disrupting a large data center will shut down most of the area that it's located in. Let me give you an example. All of us know about this AT&T data breach. Well, if you would research it, you will find out that it was in, I believe, Nashville, but in Connecticut, we felt it. I remember very well, we had no 911, we had no cell phone usage. It was just horrible. Just imagine. And there are physical attacks that are happening to buildings every day. Just in 2026 in Berlin, there was a power grid interruption. Tens of thousands of people had no power due to arson. So the security threat is out there. And just imagine if this data center is located within feet of a housing complex or a school, and some homegrown or foreign terrorists decide to blow it up. Do you honestly think that you're not going to be unaffected or untouched by this? So I just think that terror is a very serious issue because of what's inside of these data centers, and I don't think we should overlook it. Thank you.
I want to add a few more things to the excellent comments that have been made. One thing I've learned from organizers is that this is not inevitable. I mean, yes, we're dealing with a $1 trillion industry, but just get this, between May 2024 and March 2025, $64 billion in data center projects were delayed in the United States. And then in the next 4 months, $98 billion of data center projects were delayed in the United States. So we are seeing a magnificent rise in the power of organizing. So the first thing I've learned is that data centers are not inevitable, but this is a fight we can win. The second thing I've learned is that many of these data centers are coming without clients. They are trying to create a market for their product. We do not want, let me be very specific in my language. I do not want generative artificial intelligence in any way, shape, or form, period. Generative artificial intelligence I find to be extremely dangerous to our economy, to our personal security, and to our collective liberation. And the companies that are building this are building it first and then trying to find a market. So you and I, we are not the main consumers in this product that they're trying to stuff down our throats. You listen to what Sam Altman is saying. You listen to what other designers of generative artificial intelligence are saying. They're being very clear. They want to replace human labor. This is their plan. They want to make most of the work that we do obsolete and run by a generative artificial intelligence that actually can protect itself. We're dealing with an intelligence that we do not even understand. This is truly dangerous. But is it inevitable? Absolutely not. Is this something that we need? Most definitely not. Is this a fight that we can win? There is a very real possibility that yes, we can win this fight. And we owe it to our children. We owe it to the land and the water that we love. And we owe it to all the other nations around the world who are still trying to breathe under the boot of US military imperialism to at least give this fight all that we have. That is what I have learned from organizers in the United States working on this. And that is what I've learned from organizers internationally who are calling upon us to strengthen our fight against data centers.
If I want one thing that for people to take away is that Memphis is our organizing is so resilient, right? Who would have thought organizations with less than, sometimes $100,000 a year would be on the front lines fighting data centers and winning, right? We've been holding their feet to the fire. Um, and the power to know that anytime that they say something is a done deal, right, Keyshawn, can be undone. We saw that with the pipeline, and we saw it with other fights of environmental justice around Memphis. And so our resiliency depends on coalition building and not looking at this space as scarcity for resources, but actually moving in a space where we are healing and moving in this movement where we're using resources collectively, right? And we're not competing for resources, but we're collectively utilizing our resources and also continuing to understand that sometimes out when I was looking for examples on how to fight data centers or whatever, somebody said, Marquita, y'all it. Y'all the example. And I was like, what? I said, we just started fighting this. How did we become the example? And then I was like, you know what? I had to go back on what my mother taught me about people power. She walked a mile a day educating and informing the community about military toxins that was in our neighborhood and making us sick. And guess what we have to do? We have to use that same people power. We have to put those boots on the ground and not just a little dancing kind, right? We have to put those boots on the ground, knock on the doors, talk to our neighbors, and work collectively, right? Um, this one Memphis, this one Shelby County, this one nation, this is one world, right? And we have to really utilize our resources in such a way that we're not only caring for each other and making sure that the organizers are okay, but also making sure that we're using all the tools in our arsenal, from whether we're using participatory research, like we're doing with the indoor air monitors, or even with the outdoor monitors, EPA standard that Keisha and them are getting installed. When the purple air monitors, we are sitting down more, figuring out, okay, what you got going? How can I plug in? Okay, how can I support you guys? And that has made the world of difference about the fight. And it has elevated the fight where not only it's not just Memphis talking about it, but internationally people are knowing that we're fighting here. And we will decide whether or not we win this fight in 2 to 3 years, and I believe it can be done in 2 to 3 years or 30 years. And I do not want this to be like the depot fight. And it's been over 30 years. And we're still fighting for transparency. The time is now. We cannot let these data centers and they are connected to the military industrial complex too, because it is defense data. So it is a matter of national security, right? For something that does not have the human capacity to know when something, or ethics to know what's right and what's wrong in society, right? And because it's not going to learn what's right and wrong for everyday people. It's going to learn what's right and what's wrong for billionaires and how it survived as AI. And so our biggest takeaway is that we are the power, and we are powerful than billionaires when we work together.
Thank you all so much for those answers. I want to pose a question to you, Dr. Khalil Shahid, specifically. Given that you're coming a little bit sort of outside, from NRDC, I'm just kind of curious, what do you think are some concrete ways that allies like NRDC or others that might be on the call can plug into this issue and really strengthen community leadership rather than substituting for it?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think first and foremost, we have to respect, the work, the expertise, and the effort that's already happening in the space. And that's, evident by, my co-panelists here and everyone in the chat who's, filling in, with what's happening, in their local struggles and just the energy that they have. So I think first and foremost that respect. I think second, sometimes, and, we can, we have, the luxury, and the privilege sometimes of resources, access, I can use, data services, that maybe some other local smaller groups can't access to that, we can map every data center country in the project existing, proposed, permitted, map them, by type of data center, hyperscale, co-location, like et cetera. That type of information, is not information that's readily available to our local partners. And so we can help, with, some of the data, some of the analysis. I think, again, I've had the luxury when I first heard about what was happening in Memphis with XAI, I spent about 6 months, just reading, listening, watching, consuming everything that I could about data centers, AI, from, the data center side, the tech side, to gain a level of expertise where I'm able to join, conversations like this one and to be able to share back. So again, having, that space, to be able to do that. I think is also going to be very important. I think obviously too, we know, what the disparities in the power dynamics, and I say power really in air quotes because sometimes, we in the big greens can confuse our access to politicians, our access to quote unquote decision makers as power when we have no power, really. We have no leverage, really. If our only leverage is access to people who are making decisions that we don't necessarily agree with, that our values don't comply with, we have no power. So the power is actually with you all, if we are brave enough to leverage it, for these conversations. But that being said, we have to be brave enough to be able to do that. And so, where we do have access to those conversations, with these big, decision makers, policy makers, we have to be able to leverage those voices, your voices, carry those folks, into those conversations, to make sure, that, well, first and foremost, that obviously, that, we're not undermining, all the great advocacy that is happening, because if there's any positive result that comes out of this, it's only going to come from the resistance that's growing across the grassroots as really a bipartisan resistance. Like, we have all these, moderate politicians who say that, the ideal situation is when we have these bipartisan agreements across the line. It's happening here. We got, Democratic socialists, we got Republicans, we got even MAGA people who are, pitching policies, to regulate AI, to regulate data centers. So this is an opportunity to really build a type of coalition, for a future, that we all say that we want, but that needs to, center, creating the type of democratic space that allows, these grassroots voices, to emerge, to gain strength, and to really lead us, into the place that we want to go. And I think that, if there's any role for, the big greens, it's really that, to creating and supporting that, institutional space, for you all to be able to have the greatest, impact, and to continue to show us, what we've been missing for so long.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh,
You're right,
Marquita, did you want
Adrian.
to?
I also run for
Also,
office.
yeah, y'all run for office.
Adrian, look, they told me I had no chance in hell in 2020, right? And what I tell people that really care about people, that really care about the environment, uh, chances and opportunities don't come from hell. So just run anyway. Y'all, right now, we are the resources that we need. Between all of us and working collaboratively will get us where we need to go. um Ways that you can get involved. Keyshawn be having a that MCAP always have phone banks, so you can phone bank from wherever you are in the United States, and plug in. Go to both our websites, right? Volunteer, sign up to volunteer. If you got, you know, if you got a few dollars or even more than a few dollars, kick them our way, because we fighting billionaires. We need those kind of money resources and people resources. And so that those are ways that you can always help the grassroots organizations that are on the ground fighting. And we are working better collaboratively, and we're locked in, and we're able to, this coalition is going to continue to happen, so we won't get caught slipping like this time. They caught us slipping. And we know, whether it be data centers or another type of threat within the next 5 years, we'll be ready, because we build a strong coalition that really understands that the health of the environment is connected to the health of the people. Biological and ecological. The health of the political environment is connected to the people, and also the ecological environment. We see now more than ever that engagement at all levels of decision making is so possible. And we can actually get in those rooms where power decisions are made. Get appointed to the water boards. Get or run for the, if it's election for the water, run for those water boards, run for the energy boards. Be participate. I didn't know enough about energy when I got appointed, but my friends helped me get up to speed to know what to ask for. I may not have had the technical terms, but I knew. I was like, hey, this is what I want to say. How do I say this in the right technical? They had me ready, right? Utilize the resources. Uh, when we need research, when we need, sometimes it's litigation too, like, whatever your talent is, I don't care if it's making infographics. You can donate that to MCAP and So Injustice, to help us explain and educate. Whatever your talents are, we're asking for you to donate them to us so we can actually win. If you have money to donate or time to donate, that is how we win, is this collaborative resources in creating a community, not only just to be resilient, but to win.
Love the solidarity here. I saw Khalil's hand go up and then Keyshawn, and then we're going to move on to some questions from the audience.
Yeah, because Marquita just made me think real quick too, and I didn't say this from the outset, but and I think it was either you, Marquita, very early on, or maybe it was you, Ronnie, who talked about where these things are showing up, and if they haven't come to you yet, they are coming. And so as I was beginning to to look at what was happening in communities like Memphis and Bessemer, Alabama, and Jackson, Mississippi, and Lansing, Michigan, and really all over the country. I live in Prince George's County, Maryland, and just lo and behold, I was informed that there was a permit request for an 860 megawatt data center a mile from my home. So it really hits home like very, very quickly. And but and so me coming into that situation both as a member of this national organization, but also as a local resident. One thing again, that we are able to do is to bring additional resources, but also to be able to facilitate. Cross coalition building because whether because we work with environmental justice communities and organizations, we work with labor organizations, and I mentioned in the chat we have a very big problem with the building trades. The building trades want these jobs. They don't care, what the environmental, the social, economic impacts to anything else are. They don't care that the AI being developed is eventually going to put them out of work forever. They want the jobs now, and they're willing to sell everything out, to get them. We're also hearing from affordable housing advocates. Data centers are competing with housing development. When you go into a community and you are monopolizing the grid, you're monopolizing water resources, you restrict the amount of housing that can be developed in that community. So you're restricting the ability to build affordable housing. The construction workforce that used to build housing is now being diverted over into building data centers. So again increasing the cost of building and retrofitting new housing. And so that's the type of connections, cross-sector collaboration that we can build with national organizations to support a lot of the grassroots work as well.
All right, Keyshawn.
I had taken so many notes. I don't even know which part to answer, but I'm just gonna say, I know there's a lot of energy around understanding what we can do to either stop these facilities or what can we do once these facilities are set up. If you don't have a facility in your area, one thing that I would consider, and even if you do, is a data center moratorium. And that's something that you can really push forward. And Dr. Masri, I don't know, I'm probably saying that wrong, did mention that in the chat. The AI and data center moratoriums, ultimately, I am more so for data center moratoriums because that encompasses usually the cryptocurrency and these hyperscale AI data centers. But these moratoriums act in a way, and they are usually set with a term limit. And so a moratorium will last 48 months. 36 months or so on. But what it does is it gives you time to really understand how to set up regulations and to set up the necessary laws in order that this is done in a way that considers the community and economically does not drain your entire county, and at the same time has environmental protections installed in it. The other thing that has worked here in the city of Memphis is community benefits ordinances. Our mayor put forward a community benefits ordinance, and he left out the community. We organized and had an amendment made to his community benefits ordinance that allowed for a community advisory board to discern what would happen with the funds that they would get actually from the property taxes from XAI. So there is always a way for our communities to be represented, for our communities to seek some type of restitution in these processes. Never given to the idea that it is just all over, or that these organizations, these oligarchs, have all the power. The power, like Marquita said, like our other panelists alluded to, is with us. And so we're not just fighting, we are winning. Elon Musk and XAI were burning 33 methane gas turbines at once, and now they have installed cutting edge technology and reduced the amount of turbines that they've had on site, and now are planning to bring solar as a form of power generation. And so don't ever feel like things can't be undone, things can't be fixed or rectified. We are in the position of power. We are in the position where we get to discern what happens. And though it may, look bleak at times or frustrating, I've shed plenty of tears in frustration or just sadness about this situation. But what I know is that we are not alone in this fight, and we are part of a legacy. Folks have been fighting for equality and social justice and environmental justice since way before I got here. And so we continue that same fight, and we continue with that same fervor and that same positive optimism that we know the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice.
Thanks, Kishan, and thank you all. We're going to move to try to get through, I think probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 audience questions. We'll see with time. I'm sure we could talk all night about this issue, and the chat is really busy here. I know everybody wants to talk a lot about this topic. It's such a hot topic and such a critical issue. The first question from the Q&A that came through, that I think it's a really interesting question. And I know and looking at multiple of our panelists, I've seen many of you have had coverage on the issue in media. And we got a question in about what gaps in coverage have panelists identified in news coverage of AI data centers, and what actionable steps can local media take to fill those gaps? So I'm going to put that question in there and ask you all if you've seen any. Have you seen any gaps that the media is not covering on this issue that should be covered more, especially at the local level?
Yes. And I think it's important, though, to break down what we think about the media. I mean, recognizing that the New York Times and the BBC have become yellow journalists at best. Here I'm referring now to our local newspapers. If you still live in a town that has a local newspaper, one of the biggest biases that I have seen come out of the press is the presentation of data centers as environment versus jobs. So they present it as, okay, data centers may do this and that and this and that to the environment, but this is what they're doing to the jobs. These are the jobs they are promising. They never tell us about the jobs they actually bring, just the promised jobs. The other gap that they leave out is they talk about the potential for data centers to provide increases in property taxes on a local basis. So I'm talking here, these are North Carolina examples. Okay, while it may be true, not always, it may be true that a data center may increase property tax revenue for the local city or county, may, again, there are exceptions. It does not result in an increase of state funds because these press agencies have not disclosed that data centers are an exceptional industry nationwide and are receiving sales and tax usage exemptions. And for 12 of the states in the country that provide these sales and tax usage exemptions, we don't even monitor how much that actually turns out to be. We give an exemption and we don't even know how much we're actually giving away. So the main bias that I have seen in the press is this presentation of environment versus jobs. And even when they talk about the environment, they really minimize the harm. And then when they talk about the costs, they present it as if data centers are here to provide revenue for the city, and they fail completely to talk about the amount of state revenue that these data centers are given. So that's a really big one. But I would also encourage us to keep in mind that we need to be looking at data centers intersectionally. And if we know the press is lying to us about data centers, what else are they lying to us about? And I specifically here want to talk about the military lies, the surveillance lies, and the imperialist lies. Let us not forget that in this past week alone, The United States has committed a war crime. The United States has kidnapped a sitting elected president. The United States has invaded a country and threatened to invade five other countries. And that ICE has killed publicly the first US citizen that we know they have killed, in addition to having committed 17 other shootings and having 32 other people die under ICE surveillance. This all just happened in this past week, and we're not even talking about the additional harms of the military industrial complex of this country. And the military industrial complex of this country are intricately tied to data centers. And I finally want to talk about one last word, which we have yet to talk about. We would not be here today were the economy in this country not founded on profit only. We would not be here today were the economy in this country not founded on capitalism and funded by militarism and imperialism. Let us keep our eyes on the prize in that avenue. And while we work to stop data centers, let us have the courage of imagination to dream a different kind of economy and a different kind of democracy and a different kind of national social contract.
I just want to
Amen.
add,
I just want to
I
say
know,
amen.
yeah, I just want to say amen. And the military industrial complex is really active here with the unsafe task force that's shaping Memphis as a city full of criminals, right? And that is farthest from the truth. Crime has been going down. And just the narratives, not only are they lying about the data centers here, but they also are lying about the crime numbers, right? They can't be verified. And um, with us being under occupation and with the data center, those things go very hand in hand because we have National Guards here that are really targeting activists, right? Um, and and a local sandwich shop where they just occupied the space as a staging location um, with 20 cars. And it's such a small space, right? And so for them to put 20 cars on their lot is unreasonable. But these are the things that are not only with data centers that are happening, but these issues are interconnected, right? Um, I've been My mom and I worked for 30 years for accountability around the military industrial complex. And now here I am also seeing the intersection of data centers and the military industrial complex. We cannot fight in silos anymore, right? We have to work in coalition and we have to do relational organizing. Um, when the takeaways, yes, there are some things that you can do in policy, like the moratorium, or even making a noise ordinance where data centers can operate between the hours of 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Right? There are some things that you could put in place um, with some of the gaps, especially with local ordinances, right there too. However, we have to take back how our communities are built away from billionaires, right? They shouldn't dictate how our communities should look. They shouldn't get to dictate putting climate negative industries in communities that are already affected. We need climate positive industries, things that heal the earth and heal people. We cannot continue to rely on fossil fuels to fuel the future. This is interconnected with the just transition. It's interconnected with climate justice and environmental justice. I have to say, within I'm old enough to see the birth of the climate justice movement, right? And now we're working hand in hand more, and I appreciate that. We and I can't stress this enough, right? The only way we win is by working together.
Agree.
If I
Agree so
could,
much.
I know that this webinar is being recorded, so I just want to publicly make my correction. And thank you, Khalid Shahid, for correcting me. I incorrectly said that Renee was the first US citizen to be killed by ICE. She was not the first U.S. citizen to be killed by ICE. Keith Porter, an African-American father of two, was shot and killed by ICE on New Year's Eve after they refused to identify themselves. So we have ICE not only killing individuals in this country who are undocumented and who have every right to be here, but also US citizens. And I also want to add that when we look at the relationship between the military industrial complex and data centers and increased fossil fuel extraction and the guzzling of additional oil, we need to tie that with the main reason that Venezuela was invaded and there was a regime change, which is the theft of oil. And therefore, we tie that to Chevron. And then we follow Chevron further, and we see that Chevron is the main financier of the ongoing Israeli US funded genocide against Palestinians in Gaza and for unfortunately also soon to come to the West Bank and other parts of occupied Palestine. These intersections are critical. So, let's think about it holistically and let's fight together, just like was said by Marquita. We need to be fighting together. And thank you again, Khalid, for correcting me.
I appreciate that, Rania. Yeah, it's all interconnected. We had some questions in the Q&A from the audience as well. I'll put two in, but folks are wondering, like, what is Congress doing? How do we get senators and members of Congress to start taking action? Is there anybody who's doing it? What policies are happening? I'll throw two questions in the chat, but I think that's the gist of it. So can anybody speak on the panel to what's happening in Congress, or any champions here that folks can rely on?
Very quickly, Bernie Sanders is trying to pass a moratorium in the Senate, and it has not been supported by neither Democrats or Republicans. He's got a handful of support. We have also Representative Summer Lee, one of the most brilliant representatives in Congress, who's trying to push an artificial intelligence civil rights bill, and also needs more support. So we have a handful of good initiatives being done in Congress, but unfortunately, both the Democrats and the Republicans overwhelmingly have drunk the Kool-Aid on this issue.
Well, it sounds like a lot of people need to be replaced in the midterms, right? The
Speaking
midterms are
of,
upon us. The midterms are up upon us. And I'm sure there are lovely people on this call that are qualified to run on a local level, a state level, and on a national level, whether it be in Congress. Um, and I encourage you, the only way we change it is that if the table don't, the only way the table change is if we change it. That means that we have to build the table that we want to sit at. And the way we do that is really impact the systems that are impacting our lives. Um, I know people say, hey, I was the only environmental justice on a regional energy resource council board person. There were other environmentalists, but I was the only environmental justice advocate in the room. And so when I show up and when you show up, people around you change. You are the change that you are seeking right about now. And you are powerful, and working together, we can get anything done. And I know I sound like I'm being redundant, but listen, last year people felt like we got whooped down, and we lost a lot of ground on federal policies and different things like that. But we didn't lose anything because we still got each other. And I remember my favorite chant in Black Lives Matter movement is one step forward, and we're not going back. We have to keep moving forward because people do want to take us back. They want to take us back where freedoms are limited, and not just for Black people, all people. And right now, a lot of people say, hey, this is just affecting immigrants. No, it affects everybody when freedoms are eroded. And right now, we are the generation that's defining what freedom looked like. My great grandmother was emancipated from being enslaved. And freedom then looked different what freedom looks like today. And what freedom, as we define it today, is a freedom from fossil fuel energy and a just transition to an economy, a circular economy that moves towards zero waste. We define that. You and I define that. And the only way that things change is we show up in the rooms that they don't want us in. And so, and we ask the questions and we hold accountability and we remove people who don't want to represent people. Because the billionaires don't live in Memphis. We do. And so, how do they get to decide what our communities look like? And so, that means that the people that made these decisions and signed these NDAs, they do not need to get into another office because they don't want to represent people. And so you are the people that need to be represented. And I say this again, and I know we're all in nonprofits, right? But you have the power to change things. And if people are not listening to you about what we need for a livable future, then we have to move and build an infrastructure out that we're not just leaders of 501c3s, but we also have super PACs and C4s, and actually moving towards where people power is showing up in the halls of Congress. How many times have you been to Congress this year? Not well, this is New Year. Well, last year. How many times did you go to Congress? Right? Do a thumbs up if you went to Congress this year to talk about anything, whether it be reproductive rights, environmental justice rights, or whatever. You have to keep showing up. They don't, you know what scared them is when everyday working people go talk to their congressperson because they expect you to go to work and not really be concerned about what they do, right? They want you to get clock in to your 9 to 5 and just let them do whatever they want to represent the billionaires. But guess what? You could take off work and you can go to Congress. Even when you at work, you can call Congress on your break and you can hold your elected officials accountable around these data centers, clean air, clean water, and clean soil. It doesn't matter where you live. We all deserve that, right? And we deserve a livable future. And just keep showing up. The media has been biased and the narrative has been that things are done deal, that we're losing ground, but we're still holding the ground. As long as we're standing and we teach our children and our nieces and nephews about where we need to go in the future, we'll always win. When it comes to this, we define freedom for right now, and it cannot change if you're not showing up in the rooms.
Thank you all. So we're coming to the end here. I'm wondering if we can sort of do like a rapid round robin with everybody. 1 minute. What's like a concrete next step that everybody who has participated, we had a lot of folks participate tonight. What's something they can do? What's the next step that they can do if they want to take action on this issue?
I'll tap in first. Uh, I say the same thing most every time that I am blessed to be in company of people is that the closest 5 people to you should know what you are learning right here, right now. They should get a message. They should get a download. You should get coffee. You should talk to them about what is happening across the country, but especially wherever you are and how they can get involved, whether it's politically or just organizing. Y'all, organizing is what we have to do. Organizing is something that we are responsible for doing. And all organizing is loving your neighbor out loud. And what I mean by that is just showing people you care about them because you are informing them, because you are, empowering them with information. And for me, taking that to the next step is allowing them to be a part of this process. Take your closest 5 people. I know about everybody has a group chat these days, and get engaged. Sign the petitions. They take maybe 60 seconds. Make the phone calls to your local state representatives and your Congress folks up in DC, make one call a month, right? This doesn't have to be a cumbersome process, but it does have to be a process you're involved in. And so learn as much as you can about data centers and about the ways, whether it's organizing or whether it's legislation. There's a North Star document by AI Now. There's another document, a few robust documents for media justice around data centers and data centers in the South specifically. And so get the information, follow the folks on this panel. They are continuing to put out great information, but then also stay engaged. Don't overwhelm yourself, but also bring your community with you. You doing this alone is difficult, but doing it together makes it worthwhile.
Thanks, Kishan. How about you, Sharon?
In addition to what Kishan has just said, we need help with research um, and gathering the evidence that we're going to need to stop these data centers from coming and to educate the public at large. We need health experts, we need grid specialists, we need engineers, we need people to attend local zoning boards and meetings, people to understand and attend permitting meetings. We need people to document baseline issues such as what was your water bill 5 years ago? What was your electricity bill 5 years ago? What, how did you deal with noise 5 years ago, if any? And then we need people to stay on top of large land purchases. Who's buying up all the land in town? And research those folks or those corporations that are buying up all the land. So basically, we need help in that way, in addition to what Keyshawn has just said. But that's it.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Rania.
In addition to what everybody said, I would say just take whatever organizing you're doing and take it up a level. So make sure that the city council where you live and the town commissioners where you live know you. They don't have to like you. They just have to know you, and so let them know you and start, if a moratorium hasn't been passed, get them to pass one. Just start building those relationships. Increase your whatever you're doing, increase it further, and know that the slew of panelists here, myself included, and everybody else, we're here to support you with whatever resources you need, whatever other support that you want. There are so many organizations across this country that are committed to doing this work. We just need additional support. So uplift your work, whatever you're doing, just do more of it. And hold on to the courage of imagination. I think that becomes critical, because one thing that gets drained of us a lot is we are taught to lose hope and we are taught to acquiesce. And I want us to really be able to dream bigger than our lives could possibly build.
Such an important message, especially right now.
So
Thank you.
I'm just going to add one more thing. Have fun with this work, right? You can do restorative things like I'm going to do a belated fundraiser at the later part of this January uh, to not only talk about air quality, but do it in a fun way. We're going to have an oxygen bar and talk about air quality as a fundraiser, so people can do the bougie things that they like to do with the oxygen bar and also learn about air quality. Um, Also, uh, we can do things like, I think everything everybody else said, and I'm just gonna add this one little thing, not only to have fun with the work, but make sure you are registered to vote and the people around you are registered to vote. And when you get involved beyond voting, because voting is like the basic requirement of engagement. There's so many decision levels. There's so many different types of boards. There's so many types of all zoning. It's so many types of what is it? Community development corporations. People that are making documents that are shaping how your community is built without you participating, right? And so this is how you get involved is there's things that you can do for yourself, like make sure you register to vote, do that, right? And the people around you, especially around holidays, that is a great way to engage people. We have something on our website where you can, and that we've partnered with other organizations across the state of Tennessee, that you can look up your registration, or somebody you know around you can look up your registration, and you could also get involved in different kind of ways. This work is heavy, and so you must build rest and recreation into it. That's the reason why we're doing the oxygen bar with the air table, the air quality round table. Because I was like, hey, I want to talk about this for my birthday, but I want to do it in a fun way. You don't have to make this work. It's so serious, but it don't have to be heavy all the time. Um, Build restoration in this work, where I like how MCAP, that they utilize the park for organizing meetings, and it gets people outside, right? Um, a lot of people don't come outside because of the different respiratory illnesses that they have here in Memphis. It is like one of the highest, but continue to do things like you might want to host an event where you talk about data centers and you want people to register to vote. So you like roll and register and go skating and learn about data centers. Like there are things that you can do. Be creative, have fun, do the things that you love to do, and integrate it in this work, because there's people don't want to work with people that look unhappy and angry all the time, right? They do not, because we are angry all the time because it's so serious. Yes, we can, we are angry about some issues, but we have to make sure that not only that people learn how to fight, but they learn the recreation and the rest in this work, so we can have not only longevity, but we work better as coalition members. Even if it's a community meal at the end of the month, to talk about an issue with your family and friends. And you might look at a webinar and then let's discuss it. So like this may be the webinar that you use for this month about data centers. But there are plenty more webinars that you can plug in. And that I'm sure all of us have been on talking about data centers over the past year, where you could spotlight, an issue and bring people together. Because when people do things in community, we win with community. So um, organizing is what you make it, right? And it don't have to be real loud for everybody to see. It can be relational, and then it's an impact. The organizing is all about bringing people together. So whatever you do, yes, it's times we need to be angry when we're in front of these elected officials when they made decisions without consulting us, right? But when you're learning about this work, bring people in. We're tearing down belief systems about how the world is supposed to be. And so we have to build people up where they feel hopeful and that they have actions. Like today, you got actions that you can do. Talk to your five from Keyshawn, right? Um, there are policies that we talked about that you can follow on a federal level and local level. We invite you to work with us, and let's win together.
I think that's a good place to end. So I just want to thank everybody once again. Thank you again to all of our panelists. You have no idea how much I just appreciate your leadership and all of the work that you're doing, and for sharing your time tonight, your experience, your insight. I feel like I speak on behalf of Dr. Hollis, who probably also very much appreciates you taking your time tonight. If there's one thread that I'm taking from the conversation tonight, and Marquita just banged it in my head time and time again, is that we need solidarity. We need solidarity on this issue. Collaboration and everybody working together. We're fighting some really powerful people. And so we need a lot of collaboration. And we know this conversation is bigger than just this one night. It's bigger than just one community. So this is also part, I just want to take the time to say this is part of a series. We're going to hold a part 2 on AI data centers, another roundtable in February. So look out for that information. In that roundtable, we're going to go a little deeper on the technical and policy implications, the rules, the permitting process, the oversight questions, what stronger guardrails can look like. We got a little bit about that tonight, but we're going to go deeper into that next time. If you want to follow along with our work on this issue and others, we'd love to stay connected. Please make sure you take down the panelists' names. I know they've been putting their information in. I know my staff have been also dropping in information in the chat on how to subscribe to our newsletter, the NWF EJ team newsletter. You can also follow our team on Instagram at ENVJustice_NWF. So make sure to follow us there and you can see what work we're doing. And make sure to follow these amazing panelists and all the work that they're doing as well. So, Dr. Hollis, do you have anything else to share?
No, other than thank you all so much, the panelists as well as the audience. We have gotten so much rich information, and I hope that we can indeed, work together. One of the things that people were talking about that really did my heart good, and Jacob will tell you, was the collaboration message that I was getting both from the panel and from the audience, because I believe in that, and we need that. We need to work together so that we can cover all of our bases and make sure that and watch each other's back as well. So I just want to thank everybody. This was fabulous, and I can't wait for the next session, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So, thank you all for showing up, for the questions, for everything, and for being in community with us tonight. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you in February.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
everybody. Thank you for your time and showing up. Thank you.
Yes, thank y'all. Bye-bye.